Let me introduce the candidates. Mike Bakalis ran for governor in 1978, former state comptroller, professor, and is running now in the year 2002. Give a hand to Mr. Bakalis. Governor-Burris, former state comptroller, former attorney general, candidate for governor 94-98. Nice round of applause for Mr. Burris. Paul Vallas, former revenue director and budget director for the city of Chicago and former CEO, Chicago Public Schools. Nice round of applause for Mr. Vallas. Let's get started. And I never thought I'd enjoy any words greater than those. Let's get started. First person up. This is going to be great, isn't it? Look at your card. Roll in your number one.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be a part of this debate sponsored by the City Club, of which, of course, I am a member, and I want to commend all the leaders of the City Club for bringing us together. And I want to commend all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out on this important occasion to view us and to make your choice as to who will be the nominee of our party, that is the Democratic Party, on March 19th to go on to be elected governor November 5th to make a change in Springfield. Friends, I come to you with the experience of 20 years of leadership in Illinois government. I served in the governor's cabinet. I was an elected official, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times as a statewide elected official. And these times, when security, homeland security is a crucial issue, we're going to need someone to take over the reins of government and to make sure that they are in charge of this corporation of $53 billion. And I bring to you my banking experience. I bring to you all of my financial and community experience to lead this state on into the next century in these trying times. After September 11th, our lives will not be the same, friends. Recognize that homeland security is a key issue. We must be concerned about the security of our water, our food. We must be concerned about our nuclear plants. We must be able to mobilize our local government and our local officials during the time of any type of crisis, whether it's bioterrorism or whether it's outright physical terrorism. So therefore, the next governor must come in with experience and leadership and knowing how this major corporation works. Not only are we concerned about homeland security, but we must be concerned about educating our children. And I break my whole platform down into 3 key areas. It's called human resources, fiscal resources, and natural resources. And when we talk about human resources, we're talking about educating the 2 million children in this state and making sure that there's not disparity in our educational system. Disparity where we're paying $4,580 per child as opposed to $16,400 per child. We cannot continue in the state to do that. We're programming some of our children for mediocrity and some of them for major success. The kids in my hometown of Centralia should be able to get the same education, the same extracurricular activities as a child in Winnetka or New Trier or one of those affluent communities. So we must do that and fund education. I put forth back in 1994 a formula that we would make sure that the state of Illinois would remove itself, 30 seconds, remove itself from number 49th in its funding of 38% to the schools, at least to fund at least 51% of the schools. Not only education, we must be concerned about jobs, economic development. We must be concerned about the security of the individuals as well as the jobs that will be created. Natural resources is that we create jobs. The fiscal resources that we keep Illinois, the transportation hub of America. This state is the central location, and that's what we must be concerned about. And we need a governor who has experience, the leadership, the commitment, and the skills to be able to do that. And I'm presenting to you my candidacy for the Democratic nomination on March 19th, and the signs say stop, and I'm going to stop. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, before I begin, I just want to recognize my wife, Sharon, and my mom and dad. Can you just stand just for a second? Very quickly, you're cutting into my time. I want to thank the City Club for hosting the forum, and I want to thank Governor-Burris and Mike Bakalis, my long-time good friends, for joining with me here today. Illinois is in the midst of a budget crisis, but revenues, ladies and gentlemen, are not down. The revenue growth is down. And this after 7 years of unprecedented revenue growth that saw the state's revenue base expand by 50%. And what do we have to show for it? Schools are still embarrassingly underfunded. The level of public safety resources depends on where you live. More and more families are now dealing with skyrocketing health care costs. And many people in our state have missed out on the good times and are now experiencing depression-like conditions. In fact, many of them never left depression-like conditions. Elections are about priorities. We need a governor who will be responsible, who will responsibly invest the people's hard-earned tax dollars in things that improve the quality of life. As I have done time and time again, I will balance the budget by cutting waste and by providing services in innovative and cost-efficient manners. And as I've always done before, I will always find a way to do things with less. Quality of life issues that affect our families must be a priority. All of our children must have access to quality education if they are to participate in the workforce of the 21st century. Access to affordable health care, daycare, decent jobs, affordable utility and pharmaceutical costs, and keeping our communities safe. These are the issues we must address. And if we're going to accomplish these things, we need a problem solver. I'm a problem solver. In 1993, when Mayor Daley appointed me budget director of his $4 billion budget, bigger than the budget of 24 states, people said, you don't know what you're getting into. 3 years later, 3 balanced budgets later, 3 years of no property tax increases later, 1,000 additional police officers later, the largest neighborhood infrastructure development program later, the city was in great shape. In 1995, when I became the schools chief, people said, you don't know what you're getting into. A $1.3 billion 4-year budget deficit. And what happened? 7 years later, 7 budgets later, 76 new school buildings later, 500 renovated schools later, 6 years of improved reading scores in the elementary schools later, 6 years of the largest expansion of summer school and after-school programs later, we left the new, very talented management team with $345 million in the bank and 7 consecutive balanced budgets. A lot of people helped make this happen. I certainly didn't do it alone. But it happened because we refused to accept failure and to continue the old way of doing things. We refused to accept failure for our kids, and we found a new way of doing things. That's what we must do for the entire state of Illinois. Thank you very much.
I've been asked to talk about the issues facing Illinois. And the issue is making Illinois not only a good state, but a great state. And we can't make Illinois a great state when we have, for example, reduced our spending in education. When I left the superintendent's office, we had 48% state money. It's down in the mid-30s. We can't be a great state when our faculty salaries at our universities are 27th in the nation. We can't be a great state when the pay gap between men and women, we're 28th in the nation. We can't be a great state when we're ranked 40th in terms of health care, and the list goes on and on. There is an agenda to make this state and move this state from a good state to a great state. I think it has 5 prongs. One is to bring Illinois in line with what the new economy of the 21st century is about. And the central issue there is education and training. This economy will not move without education and training and innovation and investment in technology. We need to rethink the way we have economic development and get away from the idea that we have to bring businesses from other states and we have to bring people within our own state, develop those businesses here, and we have to expand the winner's circle of people who are in there. The second prong of that journey to greatness really is changing the values and priorities of government so that we deal with people issues and not political issues and not turn our backs on the most vulnerable in this state. And the third issue that we need to deal with is the quality of life. It affects everybody. Urban sprawl, congestion, the work-family tensions that go on today, protecting the environment, making our communities safe, and affordable, accessible health care for everybody. Those quality of life issues are extremely important. And the fourth is to bring state government in line with modern management practices, to get it in line with what the private sector has done, to decentralize, to empower people, to involve people, to really have the same kind of sound management practices that we have in the private sector, and that for some reason have simply gone by the whole public sector in the years. And finally, we need an honest and ethical government. An honest and ethical government. And the way to do that, ladies and gentlemen, is to change the way we fund campaigns. It has prostituted our politics, it's corrupted our politics, and we need to change it. We need change in Illinois. I'm an agent of change, and that's what I'm going to do if I'm elected governor. Thank you very much.
For Mr. Vallas, my name is Timothy Black. Mr. Vallas, how would you handle the criminal justice systems, particularly the juvenile justice system?
Well, I think a mistake that we're making in the criminal justice system and even the juvenile justice system is the lack of educational programs. I mean, look, one of the things that the governor cut was job training, was education in the correctional systems. I think we have an obligation not only to look at the issue of alternative sentencing when it comes to nonviolent offenses and to give judges the latitude to do those type of things, but when we put people in the juvenile detention centers and we put individuals in the Department of Corrections, we need to make sure that when those individuals are released, they know how to read. We need to make sure that they have technology skills, that they have job skills. I've run into more men and women, more men on the street who have come to me saying, I just got released from the Department of Corrections, I need a job, I have a drug conviction in my background that denies me an opportunity to get a job, and I don't have a skill. That has to change. The Department of Corrections has got to be the Department of Corrections, not the Department of Incarceration, just release people with no skills to re-enter society.
I think it's criminal that we in Illinois are now building prisons rather than schools. It is unconscionable that we would be paying 3 times as much to incarcerate somebody as to educate somebody. So we must make sure that education takes place within those institutions. And for our young offenders, especially the first-time offenders, we have to look to alternative sentencing. We have to make sure that there are community projects that are done and that there are educational programs expanded. When you have 25,000 inmates that are currently going to be taken off of the educational programs with junior colleges, I think it is unconscionable for us to take that type of action. But we also must be out in the community. What also helps our criminal justice system is to have jobs for people. Economic development is key. When families are working and children are having opportunities to be with their families and there's dinner served at dinner time and family together and there's money in the household, then we should certainly have a better chance of defeating what we have in our system and all the crime that's taking place. Thank you.
Well, I can't disagree with much of what's been said. There are really 3 issues here. One is prevention, and that's education and jobs, social kind of investment in communities. And then thirdly, to re-look again at rehabilitation. You know, that's gone out of style. We kind of want to put people away these days and say they're all bad. People can be rehabilitated. And we need to have that kind of education, social kind of investment, and rehabilitation for these young kids, and particularly the educational side.
Question from Mr. Bakalis.
I'm sorry. I'm Carol Spazzieri, a member of the City Club. This is directed to Paul Vallas.
No, it's got to be to Mr. Bakalis.
Oh,
This is the
to
City
Mr.
Club.
Kell.
We follow the rules exactly.
I couldn't.
Now, if you want to defer,
All right.
then we'll move back in line. The next fellow will call you next.
Okay.
If not, you could direct it to Mr. Bakalis.
That'll be fine, Mr.
Okay.
McAllis. I was wondering how your intent, when if you're going to become the governor, how you would make our communities emergency prepared should EMS be delayed in any catastrophe.
Should we have, say, some kind of a terrorist catastrophe? Is that what you
Any
said?
type of hurricane, any type of
Okay.
catastrophe where the EMS would be delayed in reaching the citizens, how would you prepare the community?
Well, I have suggested that since September 11th, we have a counterpart, first of all, to what Governor Ridge's position is in the national government, so that we can have some kind of overall state planning on this whole thing done on a regional basis. If you look at the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, they have some very good programs on hurricanes, on floods, on things like that. But I don't see really them addressing the kind of issues you're talking about. And I think that we need somebody to overall coordinate this whole thing and really coordinate all the facilities that we need, whether it's police, whether it's hospitals, whether it's the National Guard, or whatever that happens to be. And I think we need that badly.
Mr. Burris.
As I mentioned in my open remarks, after September 11th, this state and this nation will not be the same. We have to be prepared. The current governor has put into place some programs that will certainly seek to deal with emergency activity. But the state of Illinois has to be the central location. Communications are key. Our local police officers, local fire brigades must be able to react instantly. We must also have safety around our silos. People don't think about the fact that someone could deal with the silos that are storing all of our grain or the water and the other potential acts of terrorism. And we must be ready to mobilize our National Guard on the moment's notice to give support to the current local law enforcement officers. Our communication system must be beyond reproach, and that's going to cost a few dollars. So the governor who comes in at this time is going to have to make sure that all of those things are in place. Right now, there's a $40 million cost to try to gear up the current situation in spite of our fiscal condition of Illinois, in spite of the overspending that's taken place in these past months.
Mr. Vallas.
Two things very quickly. First of all, you have to do something akin to what the federal government did after World War II. You set up a National Security Council, an Illinois Security Council that has all the key agencies, state and local, represented and coordinating and setting priorities. The second thing you've got to do is pump money into the hands of counties and municipalities. When you have an emergency at home, who do you call? You don't call the state, you don't call the federal government, you call 911. That's your local police. I've laid out a proposal to take a much larger portion of the windfall profits away from the 9 riverboat casino investors and to distribute that money to the 1,300 municipalities in the 102 counties so that they can receive state subsidies to help them pay for their police, firefighters, paramedics, communication systems. Let me point out that the casino subsidies are up again after growing the previous year by $566 million. The state needs to take a bigger take and pump the money into the hands of counties and municipalities so that they can meet their public safety needs. Public safety, at the end of the day, is a local priority because the first line of defense is your local police, paramedics, and firefighters.
Thank you, Mr. Vallas. Now that the friendly moderator has his mic on, my name is Paul Green. Okay, hold on over there on that end. We have questions over there. Direct your question to Mr. Burris.
Mr. Burris, I'm Rick Harnish with the Midwest High-Speed Rail Coalition. Communities throughout the state, like Rockford, Rock Island, Peoria, even Champaign, they're all asking for better, faster, more convenient, more frequent train service. Can you tell me what you'll do to increase funding in order to speed construction of the planned networks?
Absolutely. Transportation is key. As I said in my opening remarks, Illinois is the transportation center of the country and of the nation, and rail should be a part of that, and high-speed rail should be. So we will certainly seek to expand the subsidy. The state now puts about $500-some-odd million into Amtrak. We should continue to do that and work with the Amtrak organization. Former governor and presidential nominee Dukakis was in the same room a couple of weeks ago talking about how we can accelerate and put high rail in. But that does not interfere with our air transportation or our trucking or other highway transportation. But the rail has to be an integrated part. In 1998, when I was running for governor, I recall I got on Amtrak and loaded here in the station where, by the way, Chicago is the hub of Amtrak. Most all the trains originate from here and spin out to other cities across the country. And I rode down to Carbondale, where I went to school, and heading back down home to emphasize the fact that we must maintain rail. I grew up as a railroad kid. The Burris family has almost 300 years of service to Illinois Central. My great-granddad, my granddad, and all of his great-uncles worked for Illinois Central as well as my father. I'm a railroad kid coming out of Centralia where we used to build the freight cars. I know what it is to have rail, and I will certainly continue as governor of this state to make sure that we have rail transportation in Illinois.
Mr. Vallas.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I certainly don't consider Amtrak to be high-speed rail. But, let me point out that we have to make a commitment to mass transit. We have to make a commitment to rail to rail commuter service. I was in Rockford, where they're still waiting for their Metro line. They've got one in, they've got one in Harvard, 30 miles away, but Rockford, metropolitan area, 345,000 people, and no Metro line. So we've forgotten some areas of our state when it comes to mass transportation and high-speed rail. But if you're going to invest in high-speed rail, real high-speed rail, it's going to have to be a partnership. Certainly the state's willing to make a commitment, but I recall one of the editorials in one of the newspapers most recently talking about the need for high-speed rail and talking about a partnership in which the federal government would invest in the infrastructure and the state would take the operational responsibility. And I think that that's a good formula, but clearly it's going to have to be a state-federal government partnership if we're going to move forward.
Mr. Bakalis.
There's no question that as governor I would support the expansion of rail. I think it's crucial. I mean, transportation is one of the keys to this new economy that we're talking about, and I think we need to do it. And I think it is sad that the Metro has not gone to Rockford, and I certainly do support that. It's an expensive proposition. It's an expensive engineering proposition. It's an expensive proposition for the state, and I do believe it does need to be a partnership in terms of a shared responsibility between the state and the federal government and the private sector. And I think it also needs to connect in some way to our airports, frankly, so that we can have some unified transportation connection within this state.
A question from Mr. Bakalis.
Good afternoon. My name is Bert Doctor. I'm the director of the 3rd Airport Clearinghouse in Peatone. My question is, recently, Mayor Daley and Governor Ryan struck a deal with the expansion of O'Hare, the building of the new airport in Peatone, and also Mayor Daley agreed to work with this governor and any governor in the future to secure the funding that is necessary to do the $600 million inaugural site in Peatone. How do you intend to do this when you get elected?
Mr. Bakalis.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but I've not been a supporter of the airport in Peatone. And I'll tell you why, because I think the issue is really the immediate kind of relief of O'Hare congestion. And I think Rockford is the answer to that. Here you have a place that has 1 million people a year that are commuting to O'Hare to catch airplanes, a facility that's already there, totally underused, and frankly, to not utilize that airport immediately, to me, is a very, very big mistake. I'm not saying at some point there shouldn't be an airport in Peatone. There perhaps should be as we expand. I don't think it's the immediate answer right now. If that deal has been struck and there's no way to turn that deal around, of course I will work with the mayor in terms of doing something. But frankly, I don't think it's a good idea.
Mr. Burris.
I certainly take the opposite view of my colleague. I, as governor of this state, will continue to build the South Suburban Airport. As I said, Illinois is a transportation center of America and the world. We must maintain that. By 2020, we will, in spite of 7-Eleven, air transportation will pick up again. We do not want that potential traffic to go to Denver, to Dallas, to Atlanta, to Milwaukee and the other cities. We need the 3rd airport. That also means that I will continue to support the expansion of O'Hare. I have problems with that south runway that would eliminate all those residents out there in Bentonville and destroy a whole community. But we're saying that understand, ladies and gentlemen, O'Hare must be and will be an economic engine, as well as Midway. And we must also keep MIGS open so that we can maintain that jewel on the lake. We can have transportation going throughout our state, and the air travel is what we'll need in the future. So I will support that South Suburban Airport.
Mr. Vallas.
Well, very quickly, I've always supported a 3rd airport. I think a 3rd airport is needed. If you look at the economic development needs, when I talked about certain areas of the state in deep recession, if not depression, there are certain pockets in southern Cook, Will County, and Kankakee. They need that shot in the arm. I also support the 355 project. I've always supported the reconfiguration of the O'Hare runways. I always had my doubts about the southern runway. Given the fact that the deal postpones the southern runway for 10 years, there's opportunities to revisit that. I think with the reconfiguration of the runways at O'Hare, Rockford's going to reap some residual benefits. And I'm pretty confident that as they go through the reconfiguration of the runways, there's going to have to be some traffic, some commuter traffic that is diverted to Rockford before Peatone comes online. So I certainly think there's going to be opportunities for Rockford. I'll tell you one thing, having spent time in Rockford, while the commuter airlines is important, that metro station is pretty important too. Thank you.
A question for Mr. Vallas.
What would you do about police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, and exoneration that's been reported so frequently in the papers as a result of wrongful convictions. As governor, what would you do to correct this injustice?
Okay, now you asked me really 3 questions in one. So can I respond to the whole issue?
Pick any one of, or all 3.
Well, first of all,
Wrongful convictions.
if you have wrongful convictions, you should investigate and you should release those who have been wrongfully convicted. And if there's prosecutorial misconduct or police misconduct, you have an obligation to investigate it and take the appropriate action. I've never shied away from cracking down on individuals who basically do not follow the law or, for that matter, abuse the law. So I wouldn't shy away from it as governor. But of course, there's a proper role for the governor. There's a proper role for the state police to play. There's a proper role for the state's attorney general's office to play. But clearly, and no one should tolerate clear evidence of prosecutorial, or for that matter, law enforcement misconduct under any circumstances.
Mr. Burris.
What one of our daily newspapers has uncovered in this city is just appalling, to see that what happens within the police custody. Now, I am not maligning our law enforcement individuals. They are there to serve and protect. But I would certainly work with the mayor of this city and the police superintendent of this city to make sure that when they seek to interrogate and investigate, that it's done and all rights are preserved. We are a country of laws and not of men. We must make sure that when they're interrogating, that they're not going through these traumatic fiscal exposures that takes place, for example, in New York, as you saw the case, or take 400 to 247 cases here, where people were pleaded guilty to doing the police interrogations, and they end up not even being able to go to trial because the judge threw out the confessions based on lack of evidence. We must, and of course the governor does not have any direct control over that other than to make sure that the state, in terms of its incarceration and its treatment of these individuals, but he can certainly set a moral tone as to how these individuals are treated in the incarceration of our law enforcement officers.
Mr. Bakalis.
Once again, we recognize that most of the police officers and law enforcement officers are fine men and women. But obviously there are abuses here. We've read about those abuses, and they're not acceptable at all. As governor, obviously, no one can tolerate anybody trying to be above the law, beside the law, any other way beside the law. You can't do that, and I wouldn't tolerate that. We'd have to have the proper kind of investigation, the proper kind of punishment if that, in fact, was the case. And also, I think we're talking about training. We're talking about training of personnel in terms of what you do and how you do it and how we deal with people. And then we're talking about people who are wrongfully convicted in any way, making sure that record, that so-called record, doesn't follow them the rest of their life and impinge on their future.
Thank you. Question now for Mr. Burris.
Yes, Alderman Ronald J. Waters from the great city of Harvey. Funding for the education, that's one of the critical concerns I have. What are your views on tax-based sharing and funding for education? And how would you fund it? And what are your views on tax-based sharing?
Well, certainly the state of Illinois has 2 million students in elementary and secondary education in this state. We spend $14.8 billion educating those. The state shares only $6.4 billion. What the state must do is to make the priorities of continuing the process that Governor Ryan has started, which I proposed in 1994 to put 51% of the revenue growth. And by the way, each year, in spite of downturns in the economy, Illinois has revenue growth. We have to maintain that particular formula and commitment to fund our schools. But it's not always funding. It's also making sure that the teachers are teaching. And our system, as I said in my opening, of funding our state education on the property tax base is totally unfair. And as governor of this state, I will seek ways to make that transfer to show that the state of Illinois will begin to carry its load in funding our schools. It is not an easy thing to do. It's like turning an aircraft carrier around in Lake Michigan. Is that a minute and a half? I'm sorry, I hope you ask the question again. I'll get back to you.
Mr. Vallas.
Okay. Well, very quickly, let me point out that the 51% thing has kind of been a shell game because it depends on whose definition of 51%. Is it Pate Phillips' definition of new growth, or is it Michael Madigan's definition of new growth? Secondly, about a third of the money that goes to elementary, secondary education goes to the teachers' retirement system downstate. And I'm not saying the system shouldn't be funded, but what I'm saying is you don't include that in the overall state appropriation. What I've proposed is basically to provide school districts with guaranteed increases tied to their per pupil funding level, tied to fully reimbursing their mandates, particularly special ed and public safety, and also tied to a need to implement and to move towards universal preschool and early childhood programs over a period of 4 or 5 years. In addition, the state needs to create an infrastructure bond bank so that it can make school construction dollars available to all districts and not base those school construction dollars on local matches, which precludes some of the poorest districts from participating. And that's what I would do, and I would reprioritize state spending to do it. The cost of my plan equals 2% of the total state's general fund's budget, so that gives you kind of a scope into what the possibilities are.
Mr. Bakalis.
We all want to change the way schools are funded, but my colleagues don't tell you where they're going to get the money to do that, and I think that's important to do. The property tax clearly is a 19th century carryover. We can't continue that. It's grossly unequal. It's unfair. It's really very unfair to every kid in this state. We need to change that. Where are we going to get the money? Is it income tax? Is it sales tax? I think we have to look at a new thing. This is a service economy, and we better make a transition in some slow way to looking at some kind of taxing of services so that we can fund education. If we don't do that, we're going to be in the same boat we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when I was state superintendent. We kept talking about this. We need some hard answers as to where people are going to get money and some new thinking on this area.
Question for Mr. Bakalis. Yes.
Joel Cohen, CEO, Richard Hoffman Corporation, and City Club member. I would like to ask, I thought the question about what you would do as your first act as governor was interesting. I would like to ask, what would be your last act as governor?
Mr. Bakalis, I'll give you a second to think about that. Remember, you're at the City Club. You know, curveballs are always in order. Go ahead, Mr. Bakalis.
I guess I'd prepare my syllabus to go back to teaching. I think is probably what I would be doing. I don't, my last act of governor, I would hope that I would be able to leave a balanced budget, a good record, and to be able to have employees who were professional and who would carry on the work that we had started. And frankly, I would like to be able to say that people could walk around this country and when they're asked, where are you from, they could say proudly, I'm from Illinois.
Mr. Burris.
I would leave my successor 3 notes. One would say, God bless you. The second would say, God bless you. And the third one would say, God bless you. Oh. No, I would hope to have accomplished a record of fiscal responsibility, to have balanced the budget. I would hope to have made sure that the schools in my second term, which I would look forward to, had been funded properly, and that we are not convicting innocent people and putting them to death innocently. Convicting them innocently. And I would hope then to be able to write the record that a job has been well done on behalf of the 12 million residents of this great state.
Mr. Vallas.
I would hope that my commitments would be the commitments that I would keep, and my goal would be to do that, because I'm not going to propose anything in this campaign that I can't, in fact, do. And I would hope, focusing on my 4 critical areas, to improve funding for education and to make sure that all children are provided with quality educational services regardless of where they live. I'm making sure that the 1.7 million people who are without affordable health care in the state of Illinois are provided it and have access to it. Making sure that counties and municipalities are not shortchanged, that the quality and the resources for public safety services, once again, like education, do not depend where you're fortunate to live or where you're fortunate enough to have been born, and to make sure that when we talk about economic development, it's just not driven by who's got the most clout, and that economic development means regional economic development planning, so that every area of the state has a plan, and that plan is supported by the state. And those priorities that will help boost the economies in those regions are priorities that the state is paying attention to.
Yes, a question for Mr. Vallas.
My name is Christine Long. I'm a member of the board of the City Club of Chicago. Also, and my question will bear on this, I'm a longtime Democratic Party activist. Long enough to remember when Jim Thompson was first elected. Now, I'm going to ask a two-part question, really. One of them is, how will you run should you win the primary in such a way that you might, in fact, be elected in November? And the second part is, how would your administration reflect what you believe are Democratic Party principles, and how would they differ, therefore, from the candidate of the Republican Party?
No. Okay. Well, very quickly, I'm as tall as Jim Thompson, but hopefully that's where some of the comparisons end. Hopefully I'll be as successful as him in terms of running for elected office. But very quickly, I'm going to run in the general election as I'm running in this primary. I'm going to run on the issues. I'm not a professional politician. I'm running because there's something to do. I'm not running because I have to formulate my position on the issues in order to get elected. I want to improve the funding for education so that no matter where you live, everyone has access to a quality education. I want to make sure that everyone has access to affordable health care. I want to make sure that economic development is indeed just not in certain regions of the state, and that don't only reward those who are already robust and are already thriving. I want to make sure that public safety issues are addressed. I want to make sure that our Department of Correctional system is a Department of Corrections and just not a Department of Incarceration, only to release people onto the street so that they can commit crimes because they have no skills and return to the Department of Corrections again. Those are basic, fundamental Democratic principles. And I think those priorities will be my priorities, and those priorities will help me succeed during the general election campaign.
Mr. Burris.
It seems like I'm always second.
Okay, Mr. Bakalis.
I'll go. But, because what we, and for those who are voting in the Democratic primary, I must say to you that we must nominate someone who is electable in November. I have not lost a general election. Once Roland Burris is nominated, I have problems with my own party and my Democrats. I'm the only one. I'm the only one sitting here who's won 4 statewide races. The only one who can beat me on that is George Ryan. So keep that in mind. And the strongest Republican candidate, I beat him for Attorney General. So we must look at who is here can get elected in November. And Roland Burris is electable because I am right on the issues. The issues, Chris, are the issues that most Illinoisans look for. What are you going to do to create jobs for us? How are you going to keep our community safe? How are you going to take care of our children? How are you going to keep our environment safe? And Roland Burris are really strong on those core values, working for the people of this state, making sure that their quality of life is cared for, and that is what is crucial. And if you do that and you come out on those issues, we will be victorious after 26 years of control of this state, where there's believed to be an entitlement by being a Republican in this state. And we must change that. You can only change it if you nominate Roland Burris. Thank you.
Mr. Bakalis.
I've run 6 times statewide, including primaries, and I've won 5 of those primaries. The first election as state superintendent, nobody gave me a chance, nobody gave me a prayer. I was totally unknown, and I won. Ran against an incumbent and won. Ran against state controller, nobody gave me a chance, and I won. And I think people shouldn't underestimate me in this election either, as I go into this election. I'm going to run on the values of the Democratic Party, and those values are opportunity. That's what this country's about, opportunity. And we need to include people, be inclusive of people. We need to make sure that people have the opportunity to really carry out that American dream. You know, the values, I think, were best stated, by John Kennedy a generation ago when he said, if a society cannot help the many who are poor, who will save the few who are rich? That's a real problem, and it's a real danger as our society pulls apart in terms of the economy. And so I'm going to follow those democratic values and make sure that the government plays its proper role, not to do everything for everybody, but to create the conditions and the opportunity for people to succeed in this country.
Yes. Question for Mr. Burris, who on round 4 is going first.
Mr. Burris, Pat Sylvester, do you support the concept of charter schools? If so, why? Or do you oppose the concept of charter schools, and if so, why?
Well, charter schools are now in the test stage, and I have not gotten a report on their condition. I was naturally, I did not support them initially, but they passed the legislature. They're in practice. And therefore, if they do work with their special staffing and other special privileges that's granted to them by the legislature, and if the bottom line is giving education to the children where the children can compete, and the children can then go out into the world and make a contribution to society, then I certainly would be open to the expansion of that. But I certainly have problems with how those schools are going to be run when we begin to expand that, and what's that going to do to the overall educational system. There's one reason, in terms of throw another little wrinkle in there, a reason why I don't support vouchers for the schools is because of the fact that it will certainly create a two-tier educational system and exacerbate the one that we have now based on the property taxes as opposed to us doing direct funding and making sure every student get at least a basic $7,000 or $8,000 being spent on them throughout the state.
Okay, Mr. Vallas.
Okay, great. Yes, I support charter schools strongly. We were authorized 15 charter schools. I think we actually approved 13, but we did something interesting. We told the charter schools that if they were successful, they could open up multiple schools under the same charter. And I believe, for the most part, they have proven their effectiveness. Charters also give schools the option, public school districts, the option to set up charters for alternative schools for disruptive kids. We have a charter school called Youth Connections Charter. It's a coalition of 26 schools for students who have dropped out. It's doing phenomenally well. So I do support charter schools, and I'll tell you, it expands educational options, but it does so on the following conditions. Condition number one is you get the same money as the public school. Condition number two, you have open enrollment. And condition number three, you've got to compete, not only compete for the same students, but you've got to the kids have to take the same exams, the kids have to meet the same standards. And under those conditions, I'll continue to support charters.
Mr. Bakalis.
In truth in advertising, you should know I run charter schools, so I do support charter schools. Charter schools are public schools. We shouldn't forget that. They're public schools. They're not private schools, and they provide choice, and choice within the public school system, which is really important. I, too, oppose vouchers, but choice within the public school system I certainly support, and I think these really provide an opportunity. And frankly, I think the kind of freedoms that charter schools are given, very honestly, should be given to every public school in the state. We ought to be giving every public school in the state the same kind of freedom charter schools have, and also, of course, that the higher level of accountability that the charter schools have. If we do that, I think we'd go a long way to improving our general school system in the whole state.
Michael Bowers, City Club member.
Your question is for Mr. Bakalis.
Mr. Bakalis, last spring, the Illinois Senate passed a bill to prohibit a teenage girl in Illinois from getting an abortion without the consent of one of her parents. If the Illinois legislature passes such a bill while you're governor and sends you such a bill, would you sign it? Would you put a mandatory veto on it or veto it in its entirety?
I think that a minor child, there should be some kind of consultation with some appropriate adult, whether it's a parent, whether it's a guardian, whether it's through court order or in some other way. I do think there ought to be some kind of consultation with a minor child.
Mr. Vallas.
I agree with Mike. I believe there should be some sort of consultation, but I'll tell you, having run the school system for 6 or 7 years and having dealt with issues of teen pregnancy, a lot of times, a large percentage of children who are becoming pregnant by adults. And there are times when those adults are relatives, boyfriends of mothers, members of the family. So it can be a very dangerous thing. I believe there should be some, obviously, adult and expert consultation, but I would be reluctant to sign legislation I would not sign legislation that would mandate parental notification.
Mr. Burris.
I would not sign such legislation that would involve a teenager who becomes pregnant. There are experiences within the family where that teenager may have to make a choice whether or not they go to a family or an outside counseling service to do that. But that should not be a situation where there is a mandated process by law. We should not get involved in that, and as governor, I would veto any legislation outright.
Thank you.
A question for Mr. Vallas.
Good afternoon. Mike Gonzalez, Premier Engineers and Architects and a City Club member. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Vallas, can you, not asking for your preference in running mates, but can you illustrate a positive characteristic on each of them and how that would help you win the general election, assuming you win?
Oh, the positive characteristic, that's a change.
Of each, including Pat Quinn.
About the 3 running mates. about the three lieutenant
I'm
governor
not sure we
candidates.
understand the question.
Was the question? Well,
For lieutenant governor candidates.
Okay, let me point out that George Washington, very knowledgeable. She's been very active on the number of boards and committees and councils. Really knows a lot about health issues, public health issues. Very bright, very energetic, very dynamic woman. Kelleher, very active, great campaigner, very knowledgeable. Kind of reminds me of many of the young staff people who worked and got their start for Phil Rock during the Phil Rock years in the in the state senate. Knows the issues, is certainly on top of the issues. Certainly an individual of ideas. Pat Quinn, hey, nobody works harder than Pat Quinn. We all know that. Pat Quinn's an activist. Pat Quinn is certainly not afraid to tackle tough issues. We may not all agree or disagree. We're certainly, we don't all agree on the same issues, but the bottom line is when Pat believes in something, Pat fights to it, and he fights to it in the end. And there's been a lot of issues that he's been at the forefront of, and I have to give him credit for that. So those would be my positives about all three.
Mr. Bakalis.
I don't know Miss Washington very well, but the few times I've had the occasion to talk with her, I've been very impressed with her knowledge of healthcare issues. Certainly her personality is fantastic. I think she's a great campaigner, so I'd be very comfortable with her. Mike Kelleher, I think, is a very, very bright individual. I think he knows the issues. He's a good campaigner. He almost won a congressional seat down in the Bloomington area. And Pat Quinn, of course, as Paul said, has been on top of a lot of issues. I haven't always agreed with Pat on some of the issues, but he certainly sticks to them. He's committed to people. He's committed to public service, and I think that's all positive.
Mr. Burris.
I would be overjoyed to run with any one of those individuals. The Democratic Party and its nomination will decide that decision, and we will then team up and run, whether it's Ms. Washington, Mr. Kelleher, or Mr. Quinn. And each one of those persons will then work with me as my partner to go out and solve these many problems that exist throughout our state. Having had run for governor in '94 and selected a candidate, I did not do what the Republicans have just done, and that is to select a running mate and team up. Because given our structure, they could very well do what happened to us in '94. And I see Dawnette sitting there when she did not select a running mate, and Phelan and I did, and then of course Don had to then turn around and run with somebody who was running on another ticket. So it comes out to be where we are now not selecting any running mate, and we will run with either one of them, and then go about the business of taking care of the people of Illinois. That's what we would do.
We're on the last round now. Yes, sir. Quick question.
Yes, it's in reference to
this is to Mr.
Vallas'
Burris.
name is Michael Gillespie.
This is Mr. Burris.
Mr. Burris, okay. We still have Willis wagons in Chicago. I mean, this is going back to the 50s, and they're still existing, and many in minority Hispanic schools. If you become governor, will you try to do away with these things and try to get better environment for the kids?
Well, I'm going to look to my colleague to the left. He's over whispering to me that there's only one, but he told me he got rid of all of them. So I'm that there are none. But
Are you passing the question to me?
no, I am not passing the question. But I said I would look to my colleague in the left who's whispering. I was a part of those situations in the '60s where that was an appalling circumstance. If they do exist, they should. Naturally, from the state standpoint, what I would like to say is that we need the state superintendent of this state of education to be under the direction of the governor, and that would certainly give us some clout in terms of how we deal with the local various school districts. But if there are Willis wagons existing in this day and age in any community, that should be corrected forthwith. And if the governor of the state, I would try to do it. You don't have any direct responsibility for it.
Mr. Vallas.
Well, very quickly, I think when we got started, there were close to 90 schools with Willis wagons. I think they're down to one. I think it's the Christopher School, and I think they're scheduled to be removed this year. Let me point out that during that same period of time, when we inherited the school system, 10% of the schools were in good condition, 90% were in unsatisfactory or fair condition. We, in that time, built 76 new school buildings. All these so-called prefab units we installed are absolutely state-of-the-art. That means fully wired, air-conditioned, with water and bathrooms. And we renovated over 500 schools. Did we actually complete everything? No, I would say we're about 60% of where we need to be. But, you know, the state has to play a role because as the mayor points out, 86% of the $3 billion that was raised by local sources. And, you know, the state has got to play a role if we're to not only, you know, for all practical purposes, with one exception, one school, the wagons are gone, but we still have a lot of the prefab schools that need to be replaced. And one of the things that I would do as governor is provide the construction money not only to do that in Chicago, but statewide.
Mr. Bakalis.
Certainly, if there's one left, it ought to go. And certainly the state has a responsibility in terms of construction money for schools. But I also think we ought to take seriously what the mayor's idea that he floated the other day about looking at different kind of scheduling. We can eliminate a lot of overcrowding by thinking out of the box a little bit in terms of how we schedule schools and how we schedule kids, particularly at the high school level. But certainly that doesn't abrogate the need for good schools, for good physical structures, and for the state to play its proper role.
Last question, reserved for the moderator. Unfortunately, goes to Mr. Vallas. What is there in your political and governmental background that suggests that you will be able to deal with the 4 legislative leaders if you are fortunate enough to be elected governor of the state of Illinois?
Well, I think that there may be some leadership changes, particularly in the Senate, but I know the 4 legislative leaders, and I know most of the leaders. And I've rarely been unsuccessful with my legislative initiatives in Springfield. You know, I've been, you know, I have a very close relationship with individuals on both sides of the aisle. So I've always been able to work effectively with the legislature. But let me point out that when I became budget director in 1993, believe it or not, it was a year after the mayor's budget had been rejected by the city council, if you can believe it. And I put together a budget. I consulted with not only the key aldermanic leaders, or heavyweights, so to speak, but I met with every single alderman on the budget. And that first budget that I introduced to the city passed with a unanimous vote. And of course, over the period of 3 years, I think there was only 1 or 2 dissenting votes. So I've always had a knack for working with legislative leaders.
Mr. Burris.
They're referred affectionately to as the 4 tops, and I know all 4 of them very well. Having been in Springfield for 20 years, we've all been there primarily together. I have a record of having worked with the legislature, even with a Democratic governor who had a Republican legislature that was hostile to our governor. And as a member of his cabinet, I was able to get programs and legislation through because of my ability to work with the other side of the aisle, in the Republican Party. Compromise and advancement of the people of this state has always been my forte. That is the reason why I am seeking to run for governor, because I know that I must keep the best interests of the 12 million residents in mind as I go about my day-to-day responsibility as governor. And whatever would be in their interests, I could compromise on and work with those leaders so that we could improve their quality of life. I look forward, with my experience and a commitment to the people of this state, to working with the General Assembly. Any governor who cannot find himself able to negotiate that path will run into some very difficult times. Having spent 20 years in that corporation, having been there, negotiated with them, gotten legislation passed, and then helped improve the quality of life as a state controller for 12 years, as the attorney general for 4 years, I come with that experience. So, Mr. Green, that would be no problem for me. It would be in the interest of the people of this great state.
Mr. Bakalis.
Well, I too know all four of the leaders, certainly, the Democratic side, and I know the Republican side. In fact, my brother's a member of the DuPage Republican Party, so I know them very well, as a matter of fact. And I've worked very closely with the legislature, both as State Superintendent of Education for Illinois and as State Controller. And when I served with President Carter in Washington, working with the Congress of the United States on legislation, I've worked with Republican governors and Democratic governors. So I think I know the legislative process. I know how it works. I've had success with my legislative proposals. I respect the legislature. I respect the legislature in terms of what they do. And I think that's important to do, and consult with them and work jointly with them. So I don't think I would have any problem in really carrying out what I've done in 2 statewide offices and 1 federally appointed office.
Thank you. That concludes round 2. We now go to round 3, the 2-minute closing, and because I am noted for this incredible nonpartisanship, I will not embarrass you by drawing. I'll just draw your names. Mr. Vallas, you're number 3. Mr. Burris, you're number 1. Mr. Bakalis, you're number 2. So, Mr. Burris, can we have your closing? You lead off the closing. 2 minutes on the topic, why I would be my party's best candidate in November.
Friends, I have enjoyed this exercise with my colleagues, Dr. Bakalis and Mr. Vallas. I've certainly looked out in the audience and see many of you. I present myself to you as those who will vote in the Democratic primary as a candidate best prepared to take on the responsibility of winning in November. We must be about the business of nominating a person who is elected, who is electable. We cannot get our feel-good situation and then go in November and we lose as we've done in the past. We must be able to put forth a person who's talking on the issues, who's going to really fund our schools, who's going to make sure that our communities are safe, who's going to take care of the homeland security of our individuals, who's going to create jobs, who's going to make sure that the information technology and that we go downstate and actually burn Illinois coal, where we can create jobs for the former miners. At one time, we had 50,000 miners working in this state, and we don't even have 4,000 working today. Downstate Illinois is a key ingredient of this state. With my background and roots down there, I present to you a candidacy who's born and raised down there in that community and who could really work with the people and know the problems there. You cannot find a better candidate for this party to nominate with 20 years of experience, having been elected to 4 statewide offices, having been beat the strongest Republican candidate that the polls are showing today. All of those are to the benefit of the Democratic Party. I served in the last Democratic governor's cabinet. We were able to cut budgets and work fiscal matters without raising taxes. I know how to do it. I'm prepared to do it. And for those of you who will vote in the Democratic primary, I am asking you to vote for Roland Burris in March 19th, because, well, in November too. I will get there in a minute. Vote for Roland Burris on March 19th, and we will be able to win in November. God bless you. Thank you, City Club. And to my colleagues, thank you very much.
Mr. Bakalis.
This is an important election, really, in terms of where this state goes in the next 4 years and as we move into this new century. I believe I bring to this candidacy experience in the private sector, the public sector, the not-for-profit sector. I've run all kinds of large organizations. I've reduced my budget every year I was in office, public office, never reduced productivity, never laid anybody off. We have a vision. We have an agenda for Illinois. I think I understand where this state is going, where this economy is going. I think I understand education, which is the key issue of this economy in this state. It is the driving force, education and training. I believe that I can bring to this state the kind of leadership, the kind of ability to manage this government, to lead this government, that I think is going to change the whole nature of Illinois. You know, wouldn't it be interesting to have a governor who just did the right thing, who didn't worry about whether he was going to get reelected, who didn't worry about whether he was going to irritate one special interest group or not get their money or not get their contributions, but just did the right thing? That, I think, would be so unique. You know, Mark Twain once said, you should always do the right thing. It'll gratify some people and it'll surprise all the rest. I intend to surprise all the rest.
Mr. Vallas.
Well, thank you. Thank you, City Club. Thank you, Professor Green. By the time this election is over, everyone's going to be talking about the same issues. And, the problems are no secret. In fact, by the time all the media advertising goes on and things like that, a lot of us are going to sound the same. I like to think that I'm going to be more specific on the issues and more focused on the issues than others, but I'll let you all be the judge. So at the end of the day, what's going to determine, what's going to change voters' minds? What's going to convince voters that one candidate is stronger than the other? It's going to be record. It's going to be experience. The challenges we face are financial and fiscal. I've managed 10 consecutive multi-billion-dollar budgets. And I've always found a way within those budgets to prioritize things, to prioritize programs so that we're investing in the type of programs that improve the quality of life. People say that public safety is the issue. Who's hired police officers? Who's built police stations? Who's put security in schools? People say economic development is the issue. Who's done major infrastructure in our neighborhoods? Who's rebuilt schools? Who's expanded school opportunities? People say that healthcare is an issue. Who's actually ever managed large healthcare contracts? Who's actually found a way to reduce healthcare costs? So this election is going to be as much about experience as it's going to be about the issues. Because with so many candidates running and so many candidates, certainly not necessarily the candidates here, spending huge amounts of money in media and in advertising, at the end of the day, particularly after 9/11, the candidates are going to have to present their credentials because people are going to be looking at the record so that the promises we make based on our experience will be the promises we will be able to keep. Thank you very much.